Welcome to the John Freakin' Muir Pod. Lace up those boots and sling on the pack for a romp through trails, short and long. With your host and Renaissance man, Doc. It's time to embrace the suck.
Welcome back to another week on the trail. I'm Doc, and this is the John Freakin' Muir Pod. Let's start off with a reminder. If you are enjoying the podcast, take just a minute and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And if you're not enjoying the pod, well, just go ahead and keep that to yourself. All right. I'm very excited about this week's guest who has been featured in Outside Magazine and Gear Junkie, and he has an epic quest for himself, which we will get into in just a bit. Named by Outside Magazine as one of their 5 new trail stars, it's my pleasure to welcome Andrew King to the pod. Hi, Andrew. How are you?
I'm good, John. Nice to meet you. I'm doing great.
Fantastic. Hey, before we get too far down the trail, I just want to ask, do you have any backpacking experience? Because I'm not sure what the protocol is in mountaineering, but in thru hiking, people pick up trail names. And so that's the real reason I'm asking, because here on the pod, we go by trail names. So,
I do have backpacking experience. Yes, I do. And I don't have a nickname though, so if you ask me that, I really don't.
Okay, all right. We'll just go by Andrew or Andy or Drew. You have a preference?
Andrew. I prefer, Andrew is, my mom and grandmother fought over that name, so I'm gonna keep that one.
Nice. I have a son named Andrew, and he is not an Andy and he's not a Drew, at least in our family. I don't know what his friends call him, but he's definitely an Andrew. So I totally get that.
Cool.
Now, have you listened to the podcast at all?
I have, and I actually think it's one that everyone else should listen to as well, because the way that you're actually asking questions to your those that have been on this podcast and for your audience, it's very enlightening to understand the different dimensions of how someone falls in love with nature and their journey through nature, from the ocean to the sea to how they see the trees. I think it's been a beautiful podcast to listen to. So.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much for that. So if you've listened to a few episodes, you know that we have a regular segment on the pod that's called the Pro Tip Insight of the Week. And that comes towards the end of the episode. So I just want to prepare you that when we get towards the end, I'm going to turn to you and I'm going to say, hey, Andrew, what is your Pro Tip Insight of the Week? What can you share with our listeners to make their next adventure, their next outing, even that much more epic? And so don't be surprised by that. And usually it's something that comes out of the free flow conversation that you and I are going to have during the episode.
I'm excited for that. I think I look forward to that, and I have something in mind to hopefully makes everyone else's life outdoors safer, calm, and a better experience. So looking forward to it. Great.
All right. We've added a new feature this season, and I'm calling it your must bring gear review. So I know with mountaineering, as well as with other disciplines you may be involved with, there's a lot of equipment out there. There's a lot of gear. And so I want to see if I can pin you down on a particular piece of gear that is your favorite. You can't do without, you have to bring it. And is there a particular brand of that gear that you prefer? And, just tell us a little bit about it. So just a couple minute gear review here.
Yeah, I think if there's one thing I want to bring with me on each hike or expedition, that's land or sea, this is the new gear that just came out. It's the Hoka 10.9 hiking boot. And the reason why I say that is because that boot for me is the first boot that isn't just built of sustainable material that's giving back to all the things I love about nature around me when I'm on an expedition. It actually is one of the first boots that keep my foot very secure, my heel really locked in, and I don't really have to where if I'm going to supinate over supinate or pronate. It's an all around good boot for me. And I just love the way it looks too. And I can say that with confidence because recently, as I was just training today in the hills, I had a different boot on and I was training in it, and I could feel a little bit something sharp in my heel, and I had a heel injury a few months back. But when I put the 10.9s back on, it's like walking on clouds again. So that is my one thing I would say. If you are a backpacker or hiker, for sure, that is a boot that I've come to love all the way.
So the Hoka 10.9s, very good.
Hoka 10.9s for sure.
All All right. Thank you very much. Now, I want to talk a little bit about how we came to set up this episode and how we got to know each other.
Yeah.
And that is, I was going through my different subscriptions, and I was taking a look at Outside Magazine, and I saw that you had been named a new trail star by Outside Magazine. And then I did a little further research and discovered that you were also featured in Gear Junkie. And reading that Gear Junkie article, I discovered that Hoka actually let you take over its Instagram account for a bit.
That's coming up. So yeah, you will be seeing that soon. I will be
Okay.
taking over, and you'll be seeing a little bit life into what it's like to train. And they gave me the ability to be on top of their Hoka Instagram for the day and have a story into what my life is like training, climbing from the ocean to the sea to in the gym. So yeah, it's going to be pretty interesting. So it's very cool.
So I saw all this, and I reached out to you on Instagram, just DM'd you out of the blue, and you were kind enough to get back to me and said, "Heck yeah, let's do this." And so I want to thank you for that. I really appreciate that. But how did all of this come together in terms of the coverage by Outside Magazine, by Gear Junkie, by Hoka? It seems to all have converged right here at the right time for you.
It's interesting. So, yeah, so I've been climbing for over since my mid-20s, over a decade at this point now. And the way that it all came down is it was a very turbulent time in the United States, as many of you would know or listen to, as you know too. It's from the pandemic to social change that was coming down. And I've always been one to be very observe of the times and see when it's actually the best time to articulate not only my feelings, but where I think the future is going for people of color. And I was asked to actually speak at a protest in downtown City Hall, Los Angeles. And I spoke to the truth and from my heart of what it felt like to be an African-American male in society at that time. It was very turbulent after seeing what's happened with George Floyd. And the speech went pretty viral where people could see it and they're like, that is Andrew speaking. I'm usually this calm, meditative guy in the meetings, bow tied. And it really resonated with people because I've always felt that way. And I've always had the nature and the outside experience to feel that. And one of my colleagues sent it over to someone at Hoka and they're like, wow, this guy is actually traveling the world, not just climbing to conquer mountains. He's wanting to connect with people. And Hoka and their team reached out to me and they said, hey, would you like to get some, gear together and see what you do? And it started from that, and it went from Hoka to Black Diamond to Asita Summit, and other brands reached out. And I really just made sure I stayed to what my core values were for building together the Between Worlds project over the years. And it went from there, and I'm glad and always grateful, and the Hoka team knows this as well as Black Diamond and See the Summit, to find teams that really understood what that speech meant. And I articulated it well to say, I want to be beyond social media. And I challenged other people hearing that to be beyond just a hashtag, to be beyond just what we see today. And I just said, over climbing the mountains over the years, I'm going to go ahead and stand for just not social injustice, for climate change, sexism, racism on top of these mountains. You're not just going to see a man stand on top of a mountain. You're going to see someone connect with the individuals through these communities that helped me get there. And that evolved to where we are today, where people are saying this is Andrew Alexander King, and this is what I stand for. And it's always for the people, people of color, as well as people that have been marginalized, to people that really just want to be outdoors and safe. So that's where we are.
Fantastic story. And we've got a segment coming up later on where we're going to talk about your Between Worlds project. I'm really interested to hear a little bit more about that.
Sure, yeah.
So let's take a bit of a deep dive, medium dive, deep dive, I don't know, about your background growing up. You have kind of an unusual path to where you are today. And so maybe we start out with your childhood, just talk about growing up and family and the moves that you had to make as a child.
Yeah, that first things first, I appreciate us talking into that. And I hope it relates to other listeners as well. But I was born in Detroit to an amazing mom, single parent. I've never met my dad, and I hold nothing against that individual. I'm grateful that he exists because he created me and that time he spent with my mom, actually for me to exist on this earth. And I was raised by a village, and that village was my grandparents, my mom, my brother. My uncles, they really were the people that really distilled in me to be a human being versus just a human doing. And what I mean by that, they really showed me what it meant to be a strong woman in society, what it takes to make sacrifice, how to provide and have compassion. Also, what it meant to really, struggle through a marginalized society, being born into a very turbulent environment. And so my journey has been nothing linear. It's been ebbs and flows. It's been a roller coaster. And like I told my mom the other day, I'm just excited to still be on this ride. It's a beautiful ride. Yeah, I've learned that over time. So over the course of living in Detroit, I've always loved school. I really did. My grandparents knew that. And I would, walk to school every day, and we live near the projects, like no more than like a block from the projects. And I went to school in the projects, and I would just come home and just study. And I just studied every night in front of like our heater. And my mom would be, working late 'cause she had, more 3 mouths to feed, including her own. And she did what she could. So my grandparents knew that. And they saw that I really had a passion. And growing up in Detroit during that time, and still in Detroit, it's very turbulent and it's very scary. And I'll just give you some context to that. My best friend in 5th grade passed away in a drive-by shooting. So, and that was something that was of the norm. I remember seeing metal detectors going into my school earlier on. And so you're kind of already put in that kind of system. And my grandparents realized like an only way for me to actually make it was actually for me to not be there anymore. And I say to people, the first mountain I ever climbed wasn't one in an exotic location or in America. It's 770 Asbury Park, Detroit. That was the first mountain I climbed, getting off that block. And it took a village. Again, when you think of like a base camp of like people around you, that those people were my base camp, and they really helped me out. So I had to make a hard decision as a child, coming out of 5th grade, to talk to my mom and my grandparents, and they gave me the opportunity to leave. And my grandparents said, "Hey, you're gonna come with us, live with us," and it was a very tough thing to do, but that opportunity gave me the opportunity to become the first person in my family tree to ever go to college, and it changed the trajectory of what that path that would have happened if I never really made it out of that mountain per se. I say so. That was my childhood, and it was, to this day, I went back to Detroit for the first time last year, and it was for the first time in 20 years. And a lot of my friends that knew me from back then and my relatives didn't make it out, unfortunately, and fell into that one-sided path. And I say this, they always say like, "You're a hero," and I go, "Why?" And they go, "Because you made it out." And I just keep climbing for them. I keep moving on for them, and I keep doing that for them to see. You can't be something if you don't see it. So, yeah.
That's a remarkable story, and it really highlights the reality that exists for so many people in this country. I know a lot of us live in bubbles, and we don't see that side too often. And I want to thank you for coming on and sharing this with us. You did not though say when you moved out of Detroit, where did you end up?
I ended up in Hawaii eventually. So my grandparents, we moved around a lot being in the military. We moved around a lot, and I got to end up in 808. And so it was interesting. I learned that was the first place, I would say, Doc, is the first place in my entire life that felt like home. And I was telling my mom this recently. It's because where you start and where you feel like home are two different things. And we'll talk about this later with the Between Worlds project, is you, myself, everyone, we're all lottery tickets. We don't really get to say where we end up when we come out, like, or who our parents are, the situation. And I was very fortunate for my grandparents to be they're in the military and discipline and really fight for this country and be stationed in Hawaii. And so I got to really see nature at its, essence for the first time. And I was like, wow, this is beautiful. And I remember just putting my feet in the sand and like walking around barefoot and just like seeing the power of the ocean and just like seeing the power of like the mountains and Diamond Head. And I felt for the first time in my life that was home. So when people ask what's home, I say, to me in my heart, that's home. Where I began was Asbury Park in Detroit, and changed the entire scope of my life. I think, being now the water person that surfs and free dives and falls in love with the ocean, then also going meditating on top of mountains, that is where I really got into nature for sure.
Yeah, there are certain themes that just continue to reverberate throughout this pod. And one of those themes that just keeps coming back again and again is just the healing power of nature and the transformative power of nature. And this is just another great example of that.
Yeah, I would say we were just meditating and just being there. The Nepali Coast, you have the Nepali Coast on the Big Island, climbing Mauna Kea, seeing a dolphin for the first time, seeing crystal clear water. And that to me is, when I climb now or travel, I think I feel healed. Like today when I was on top of the mountain just meditating after my run, and it just feels like nature doesn't judge you for what your skin color is or isn't, your social status. It just lets you be. And when you feel that, you're able to take that feeling and go forth and know that you're in a place of like safety and security. And that's why I say when I climb, we're not just climbing for social change, we're climbing to make sure we sustain this beautiful place that we have here. And it's healed me. And every time I go in the ocean, I always close my eyes and I say, hey, I'm with you, and say a nice little prayer, I guess to call it, or say, bring home everyone safely that's in the water that I see, give us back the life that you gave us here on earth. And same thing when I'm at a base camp. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, before we get up in the mountains and talk about those experiences, you did have some other types of adventures, and you continue to have those adventures, like with big wave surfing. And you're also a collegiate athlete as well.
Yeah, I did. So like I said, my grandparents and I, we fought that hard battle to be the first person in my family to go to college. And I got offers to go to college at different places, and I became a D1 athlete. It was something that I ran track back in Detroit because we couldn't afford to do anything else. So that's all I could do with my friends, is just run up and down the block. And then I was like, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna become a D1 athlete one day. I go to the Olympics. I'm 5'4". That was never gonna happen. But but you can't tell like a small Andrew King that back in the day. So I ran track and field for 13 years. From 8 years old to I was 21, and being a D1 athlete and coming from a military household and being very disciplined, those things were distilled in me of what it takes to go from good to great. And I, was very lucky enough to run at a University of Maine, had an amazing coach, one of my best friends till this day. We were just talking about, like, we've been friends for 14 years, 15 years, and we were on the same team together. We're going on an expedition together too. And that has been an amazing experience. So running track and being an athlete, that theme you'll hear over this, that transition into climbing and surfing, of like how to take care of your car or your vessel. You only get one car, which is your body. And so how to really maintain that, and what does discipline, really incremental discipline, compound to over time to, accomplish those goals. And to give you an example of that is in college, being really, 5'4", and you really gotta, and being a track athlete, doing 100 meters, what I did, 100, 100, 200, I broke into the 10-second realm. So running 100 meters, and I think a 10.8 was really hard to do for someone my stature. And all those little twirling, refining aspects, or getting 1% better each day, is what my coach instilled into me, and which I now use when I climb or I surf, and when I coach other people to surf for free. So yeah.
And that's another good phrase. I like that, incremental discipline. Yeah. And we talk about incremental progress a lot on a through hiking podcast, as you might imagine. One of the amazing things about being out in the backcountry is you wake up in the morning and you start walking. Yeah. And by the end of the day, you turn around and you see how far you've come. And it's just amazing what you can do by just doing, step after step after step. And the same thing applies to what you're talking about with incremental discipline and making a little tweak here or there and staying at it and keep working and having breakthroughs. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I was just out surfing with someone today. I met in the lineup recently, and he was watching me surf. He's like, "How did you get, good at surfing?" And I was like, "I don't think I'm good, but I thank you for that." And he's like, "Can you teach me?" And I just gave him, I said, 1% better each day. Like, you don't compete against anyone else; you compete against yourself, and you're taking that time. So I said that to him. It's like, again, work on those 3 things that you really want to tune each time you come out into the water, and you're going to get better. Everyone focus, like when I remember in track and field, I was so focused on, I'm going to run this 10.5, I'm going to run this 16, get so stiff. And I needed to bring it back to your point, to working on the steps. How are you getting into the block? What are you eating? How are you feeling? And then when you look back after the race, how are you digesting, that feedback from your coach and from yourself to be better in the next heat or so forth. And it just carried with me, and I still use it every day.
All right. Hey, our first impromptu top 3 list. Top 3 surfing locations in Hawaii.
Top 3. Oh my gosh, that's a good one. Sunset Beach, for sure. Sunset Beach is the best. I would say Sunset Beach, Rocky Point, and then Onamolana Bowls. I wanted to say Pipeline, but I'm never really gonna be try. Everyone, you got the pros on pros there. So, but Onamolana Bowls, to me, will always be close to my heart, because I remember getting my first surfboard and just walking out there and just surfing right there. So those are my 3 top spots for me.
Nice. Best time of the day to surf? Is it early in the morning or is it in the evening?
It depends. I would say depends. You have the tides, have the swell. But for me, I love surfing here in California. I love surfing at night, because it's very poetic. As the sun goes down, you can say hey, thank you for today, and I would do that. Sometimes early in the morning, it's great too, but it depends. So I'm more of a night person. Again, nothing more beautiful than watching that sunset dwell off and just giving it your best shot going into the night.
Yeah, sunsets are magical. I will agree with that 100%. And I am no expert. I'm far from being an expert in surfing, but longboard or shortboard?
Shortboard, I think for me, shortboard is the way to go. But anything, I'm pretty short, so any board to me is pretty long. But yeah, a shortboard is my style. I've tried to get into longboarding, and I don't know why they didn't translate to as fun for me. So I just love chasing the barrel. I just really do. And for some odd reason, I just get really tiny in there. So it's great.
So for all our landlubbers out there who are listening, what is the difference between shortboard and longboard? I mean, why would you pick one over the other? Are they more suited for different types of surfing?
Yeah, they are. So if you're high performance, you definitely are going to lean more towards a shortboard. If you're kind of style and, casual, you're more of a longboard. I think when it comes to the longboarders, in Hawaii, just watching, Hawaiians surf with longboards, it's an art. It's poetic. And also in shortboards, you just seeing how people carve down the line, you're able to hit the lip and really cut into, the wave and really dance with the wave as it moves down with its hand, is something that's beautiful with a shortboard. So it's more of a style and preference. Here in California and Malibu, you do have a lot of longboarders, and they really do prefer that 'cause it's more chill. You're going to pick the wave. You're going to get the wave really quickly because you have your board's long and it has a lot of foam to it. Shortboard, you better know what you're doing as soon as it's coming to you. You're taking off. You're either doing some cool carves, you're going down the line, or you're getting into the barrel. And it just depends on your style. And so for me, I love being in the barrel with a wave. For me, it's when it washes over you, it's bringing something new to you every time. And so it's just also really cool. You're this is really crystal clear air. I hope I make it out. So, yeah.
Nice. And that prompts me to ask you, before we leave the surfing topic behind us, can you share with us maybe your best moment on a surfboard and maybe your scariest moment on a surfboard?
I think those actually happened in the same time recently. So basically, there's a place called Puerto Escondido. It's basically called the Mexi Pipeline. It's down in Mexico and Oaxaca. Beautiful community, beautiful place. I studied that wave for a very long time. It's a massive, massive place, the waves to surf. So it's a beach break. So that means there's no reef, there's no point break, no rocks. It's collapsing right there. It's really big. So I've always wanted to get barreled there. I've always looked at that wave over the years and just studied it. I'm someone that really studies the ins and outs of things like mountains, anything I'm going to do, I just like break down the footage of it. So I was just watching videos, studying the time to go. I went in November, which is not the big season. And so the big season, like when it gets like 20 and above, is the summertime where you got like the pros going out there with the vest on and everything. So I went in November or October and really got into, I was like, I saw it, I was like, wow, I really wanted to take one of these. And I got barreled. I didn't have the right board for it. The people, thank you, if the Mexi Pipeline crew and are listening, thank you for letting me lend you your board, because I came with a small board and I was like, oh, I can definitely take this, 6-foot board. You need like a 7 or above board to surf that wave, like a long, good board. So I met someone down there in the water who was nice enough to coach me into what that wave was like. And I honestly got this amazing shot of me getting blanketed over with the barrel. Like it's coming over on top of me. And everyone was like, that looks like an ESPN photo. And what it looks like in there, it's like, everyone's like, all right, why are you flexing? I'm like, I'm holding on for dear life. It's Doc, it's about to shoot me out of a cannon. I'm just like, I'm not flexing. I'm like holding on, trying to slow it down.
That's not flexing, that's clenching.
It's clenching. Yes, it is clenching. You can see me clenching. And so I'm looking down the line and it is so beautiful. It's crystal clear. And I'm just like, this is my birthday gift that I wanted. And I just come out screaming out of the water. I'm like, I got it, I got it, I got it. And I was so excited. And then let's talk about the scariest time, which comes the next day. So, the next day, I'm amped, I'm feeling this. I'm like, yeah. And the next day is twice as big. And it's a pretty big day. And I paddle out and I'm like, okay, cool. No vest or anything. I'm paddling out. And I'm like, I'm going to make this wave. And I'm about to be close to the lineup. And this big set comes in. I'm no more than 20 feet probably from the lineup to make it, but I'm not paddling strong enough. And so I'm laying on my back. Laying on my stomach as any surfer, like paddling. And I look up and I'm looking at this monster of a wave about to crack on my face. I'm looking dead up at it. And I'm like, I'm not going to make it. I'm just like, I can't say what I said on this pod, but anyone else can probably I'll let you, think of those words, but I'm just like sitting there going, I'm not going to make this. And it collapsed. I try to punch through the back of the wave and I think I'm going to make it. As soon as I punch through, I'm like, I'm safe. Another wave is on its way already, the second of the set, and it collapses on me and just sucks me all the way down, punches me in the head. Like I just feel like someone punched me in the like I got in a bar fight, punched me in the head, and I just go straight to the bottom. And it's pitch black down there. And I do my breath work and I do my freediving training to hold my breath. I'm sitting at the bottom of this beach break and I'm sitting there doing my, you do certain techniques to calm yourself down. So I did vegetables and I'm like, apple. I was like, that's not a vegetable. Like, I'm like going through I'm like, carrots and I'm like, eggplant. And I'm like, when am I going to be able to come up for air? And I'm almost to like G and I still am not coming up yet. And I start, doing the swim up to the surf and it's pitch black still. And I come up and here's the funny part. My board shorts are ripped in half. I now have a bikini board shorts. My GoPro is blown away from the board and I am sitting there just happy to be alive. And I just get back and everyone's like, are you okay? And I'm just like coughing out water. And it showed me what I wanted to learn there, the good and bad of surfing, where Mother Nature does not care. Again, doesn't care who you are, what you look like. I'm serving up. If you want to take this, you take it. And I really thought I could take it. And she showed me the true potential and the beauty of the wave. And at that point, I became even more obsessed with surfing, because I was just like, this is the art, this is the beauty and the power of the elements of life. And it was, learn what you need to learn. And I always say this: if you don't know the pieces of the game, you don't deserve to play. And I think on that day, what it taught me was, you need a bigger board, one, because I was riding a 610. Two, you should have a vest on no matter what, because that can be very dangerous. And three, always respect, Mother Ocean. That's at the end of the day. So those are my two moments. Sorry, it's really long, but those are definitely my two moments. So.
That's good stuff. And it just goes to show that ecstasy and disaster are not that far apart from each other.
Not that far apart. Everyone was stoked on that photo, and I was just like, if only you knew what came the next day.
Nature is no joke. The ocean is no joke, especially. I mean, the power of the ocean is just crazy. And then besides the power, you've got stuff swimming in there, So,
right.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to watch those surfers. Now you got Kyle Linney, you got KK, she's surfing. Those surfers, they put in the work to do it. And I think that's where you look at surfers now that are surfing these big waves at Nazare and such. That is no joke. That is not. And I'll be honest with you, the video doesn't do it justice. It is way. Imagine seeing your entire house pick itself up and come after, chase you. That is basically it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were out there backpacking. You take pictures with your iPhone, or even people with decent cameras out there taking pictures. And I come back and I show my relatives, hey, look at this. You can't believe this, and the picture does no justice to it. No. And so I am sure the same applies to surfing videos. And we're watching those documentaries. You're right; it doesn't do it justice. It's not. It doesn't seem as huge as it actually is.
No, I told my coach who was out there who I met. I told him, I was like, I'm going to come here once a month every year and practice and master this wave. Not just because it destroyed me, and I'm glad it humbled me, because it should. I think when you should be humbled by the nature so you don't become too arrogant in that space, but just to show, I love big wave surfing, and I really do want to progress in it, because honestly, Doc, there's no people of color in it, really. It's the next level up where you have to have a jet ski, you have to have partners, you have to have a shaper, you have to have huge sponsors. So again, it's and I'll give you an example of this. That day when I went and got that barrel photo, the earlier morning, I was practicing down the way, and someone goes over to me and goes, oh, I didn't know Black people can swim. And I said, you're right. They can also surf. You didn't know that. And I just take off on the biggest wave.
Nice.
And so that's what emulated from that conversation, because I think, when I surf big waves, it's not because I'm I have this ego to prove. It's more of pushing the limits and the boundaries of, social and inequality. If I can make it here now, I know the next person behind me, you can't be something if you don't see it. And so if a guy that was born in Detroit is now surfing these bigger waves, I wonder what will happen in my heart, if a kid sees himself that lives in California and be like, wow, I can go do better than that. And I'm like, yes, please go do better than that. You can go higher, bigger, faster, for sure. And I would love to see that.
Paving the way. That's awesome. All right. Hey, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back from the break, we're going to get into how Andrew got started with climbing and mountaineering. And we're going to talk about his upcoming, or he's in the middle of it. It's not upcoming, but his project. So the 14 Peaks. So stay tuned for that. We'll be right back.
Hey everyone, this is Andrew Alexander King. I'm the founder of the Between Worlds Project, and currently on a journey to become the first African American to climb the highest mountain and volcano on each continent. You are listening to the John Freaking Muir Pod.
And welcome back. We're talking to Andrew King, one of the new trail stars named by Outside Magazine. And we're going to get into a little bit into how he got into climbing and mountaineering. How did that all come about, Andrew?
Yeah, so So I would say the way that it came about was I wanted to see, again, like I said, the first mountain I ever climbed was Asbury Park in Detroit. So that's the first mental mountain I ever climbed. And mountain climbing to me is mental aspects of it. And I would say in my early 20s, I really wanted to explore new heights. I really wanted to push myself to be more than what society said I should be. And I needed to have some time to really explore wilderness in my aspect of what I wanted to be. I never really did that to a certain degree. Like, in Hawaii, like, yeah, we're out in the ocean or, climb on a cave, but I never really went and, said like, hey, I'm going to go here by myself, do this, climb, be in nature and see how it feels. And, the first mountain outside of that, I don't have to think back to what that may be, but when I got to the top of it, it really just resonated with me. It was silence. There was no, anyone saying any racial issue, like words or no, like, social status. There was no argument. It was just pure silence at the top of that mountain. And I could just see on the horizon, still clear, like other mountain ranges, the forest. And I was just like sitting there thinking, that's your future out there. It's out there. And I just remember sitting there looking and really feeling at peace. And what I learned of that climb is I wasn't the same person as when I started. I was totally different. My mind was wider, my perspectives were deeper. I understood things about myself because you have to come to terms with who you are as you climb. Like, and I say this to people when I do climb, I say, the baggage that you take on your climb, if you don't release that while you're climbing, it's going to weigh you down. It's going to make it harder to get to the top, mentally, physically. And so just, I came to terms with a lot of things racially and economically that were in society that were affecting me. And it took off from there, Doc. It just went from, it just started to have behind me, well, you can't see, but behind me, I had a map of places I wanted to go. And I was like, I wonder what it's go here. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go to St. Lucia and I'm going to climb the highest mountain in St. Lucia. And people were like, why St. Lucia? I was like, it's an island. I like islands. So I went there and went through the jungle, and Mount Jimmy was amazing. And it really just, again, meditated at the top and could see all the way out. And it took off to where I started to not fall in love with conquering the mountains, but connecting with the people along the way. Because the other aspect that I learned was people really were teaching me how to be a better climber, not just physically, but mentally, of what I need to see. And so I would say it started from wanting to find myself and then be in a place where I could hear myself and look out and define what I wanted my future to be. When mountaineering came into it is after I started. It's after when I was done climbing islands around the world. So I did the highest mountain in the Atlantic Ocean, Pacific Ocean, and the Indian Ocean. Arctic Ocean, still up there. I'm planning on doing that too. So Reunion Island, there is Mount Pico de Negros and Reunion, and then Mount Titi in the Atlantic, Mauna Kea in the Pacific, and then Indonesia. I did Mount Agung and a few others as well there. And Mount Fuji. I just really love climbing islands because I could get to the top, meditate, and if the sun was still up, go back and surf. So you're kind of connecting between those two worlds, where the ocean to the summit or sea to summits. And
you're the perfect spokesperson for sea to summit now,
exactly. Right? And here's the thing, like we were like, I love this. This is my life. So, and yeah, I connected to that. And mountaineering came in where I started.
Before you get too far into mountaineering, I want to unpack some of the stuff that
sure.
You were talking about there, because there's a lot of overlap and connection with through hiking. Sure. Number one is this whole concept as nature as kind of an equalizer.
Yeah.
That when you're out there, I mean, you're kind of on the same level as everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
When you're out on a through hike, after a week on the trail on a through hike, everybody's hiker trash. I mean, there's no different social groups out there. You are one and the same. And the helpful and benevolent nature of people you find out in nature is incredible as well. Everybody is just out there for one another, and helping out strangers that they've never met before. So that's a very nice parallel with the hiking community as well.
I think that is the truth, and I think that's what I find so beautiful with nature, is because any mountain I go on now, like the other day, someone goes, "Do you have a Band-Aid in your back?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't have a Band-Aid, but can I cut you something from my shirt to help your blister?" Because you're all on the trail trying to reach that summit and define your happiness at the top. And so, who am I to stop you from feeling that same feeling that I felt a decade or so ago or more ago? So, I think that's where the hiking community is really now seeing that there should be more done, where people should be able to access these trails and feel at peace, because to your point, it is a beautiful healing process that it's basically free if you can get there. That's the problem. You just have to get there.
Yeah. And then another thing that really resonates is that you were alone in your head for a lot of the time on your hikes. I'm sure that's the same, in mountaineering, you're alone with your thoughts, and you have a lot of time to deal with whatever issues you need to deal with. And that's the same thing on a long hike. You may be hiking in a group, but the group kind of spreads out. And even if you are in a group and people are close in proximity, most of the time we're not talking to each other. We're thinking about stuff, and it's really a great opportunity to work on things.
Yeah. I think that is the key thing when you're asking what got me. It's like I had to figure things out where my life was going, and having a space that wasn't in a city or crowded with what you should and shouldn't be. And it was in nature. And I lost that, I would say, until I went back into hiking and climbing, where I could do that, where I would say you kind of have, when you're young, you have that imagination and that novelty to what something is. But when you become an adult, you become sadly warped to, or kind of more of a realist because of what society, gives to you. And you're like, you have to really digest that. And I remember just being on that hike and being like, I don't want to be that. Like, I don't want to be just an African-American that has to just be here today. Like, I want to be more than just here. And getting to the top of the mountain, I just really look back and go, I remember crying. I really do, because I remember looking out there and like, this is your future. Grab it if you want it. Take it as you want it. And from then I just kept, self-taught. No one taught me how to surf. No one taught me how to climb. I had to teach myself. And as soon as I got a taste of that, I really, really just was like, I'm going to teach myself how to navigate, use a compass, how to give myself first aid, how to read a map, how to go through all that, how to look for siphon water if you need to, like all of those aspects, how to start a fire if you're on the cold, and that to me was, again, back to being a human being in a place that was, welcoming and natural.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And you also mentioned meditation, and I know that you mentioned the mental exercise you went through while you were on the the bottom of the ocean floor waiting for the wave to pass. Yeah. And just another cool parallel is that endurance athletes, it's not so much the physical challenge that does people in as it is the mental tenacity, the mental toughness of being able to participate in endurance athletics. I've talked to ultra runners, mountaineering, long trail hikers, and just that mental toughness and that grit and sticking to it, and not panicking is such a useful skill to have.
Yeah, it is. I think for me for sure, from freediving to climbing, just did the highest volcano in North America down in Mexico, 18,000 feet. And, you have to have, again, it goes back to what I say, like, I'm so grateful that my lottery ticket punched me out into Detroit, because it taught me to have that mental grit early on. So now when I'm on a mountain, oh, you're telling them all I have to do is keep walking? Cool. No one's going to shoot at me? Great. Cool. I just got to keep walking up this mountain? Sweet. I have to do with being cold? Okay, that's cool. I'll just bundle up. Okay, so that mental grit was instilled at an early age. And the meditation is when I, got into my mid-20s, and it refined at that time of the mountain when I saw what I needed to see and felt what I needed to feel.
And that is what keeps me alive on some of the biggest expeditions, climbing and surfing and in freediving. Because to your point, if you do panic, you're wasting more energy trying to grab onto something. Life is already there for you. You have to accept it for what it is. Learn from the lessons and let it guide you out versus trying to grab it and make it into something that it's not. And that's what it's taught me in meditation is be at peace with what you have, learn from the lessons that it's giving you in this moment that's passing. So which is when I say in surfing, like not every wave is for you. It's here to teach you a lesson. Let it pass and then take the one that comes for you next. And every mountain is the same way. Not every mountain you're going to get to the top. There's been mountains that I had to turn back and I'm no more than 100 meters from the top. And I said, this is it. It's not that I'm fatigued. It's more that mentally, is my ego worth my life and the life of the people that I'm on this mountain with? And the answer is no. But if I didn't really meditate to know myself and to know what life is presenting to me, I would blow past this moment and the lesson learned will be a pretty deep consequence that I may not be able to live with. I know I would not be able to live with. Mm-hmm. And so endurance athletes, I understand that completely. Like your mind has to be it has to be fine tuned. And I tell people when I go on an expedition or I'm getting ready to fly to climb, I'm locking and loading my mind for that climb. Like I'm making sure that if I'm there with other team members, they're coming home to their significant others and their families. The ego should be like that mountain has withstand all of our family generationally. So it's going to keep being there. You are one in a lifetime. So learning that and keeping that aspect of like how to make yourself happy. And for me, it's when I'm on a mountain recently, I remember I didn't get a lot of sleep that night. We were just, again, doing the highest volcano in North America, and I didn't get a lot of sleep that night. I got maybe an hour and a half of sleep. And I remember everyone was partying outside the tent, and I was like, I just want to sleep. And I woke up. I've been training for this mountain for 6 months, and I look at, the guy I'm with, and we're looking at each other. He goes, how do you feel? I'm like, I'm dead tired. I am dead tired. And we have to go up, and again, any volcano has a shelf volcano has a pretty steep incline. And I'm sitting there being like, I am I just want to sleep right now. And I go inside my mind and we take a break and I go, you can sleep when you get back, Andrew. And that's probably another 12 hours from now. And I just have peace. I make a fireplace in my head. I make a fireplace inside of my mind, and I put my mind at peace. Put some Nina Simone on inside my head, listen to that fireplace, and I just keep going up, and I just start smiling. So you have to really see the situation for what it is, come to peace with it, and let the lesson learn the lesson it's trying to give you, which is in that moment was, Andrew, you're not tired. You just prefer sleep, but you trained, and so do what you came to do.
I like that. That's what I'm gonna tell myself next time. Doc, you're not tired. You're just not used to getting this little sleep. Yeah, very good. Very good. All right. So how did you get into mountaineering? Was there did you pick up the phone and you called Mountaineering RS and sign up for some classes, or how does that work?
So for me, I actually studied. Again, I'm a big advocate of studying. And again, the mentors that I have in mountaineering are those of the past. And I just really looked at how they got into it. And so for me, I study about 2 hours a day on mountaineering. I have books actually I'm looking at right now across the room. And I just really study the ins and outs. I have rope. I practice my knots. Really, when I wanted to go out, I would find my own mountain. So here in California, we have Mount Baldy and Mount Whitney. And I would just, again, do the triangle method, I call it. 3 things I wanted to work on. So working on your crampon steps. Like, are you doing the French approach or not? No one really, I asked people, but unfortunately, there was never really a lot of mentors there in that space. And so I had to really take it upon myself and teach myself what that would be like. And so I just stuck with it, Doc. I really just said, hey, if you want to learn what mountaineering is, these are the things you need to know. Proper crampon, how to actually use your proper crampons, proper eye sacks, how your weight is in your bag, elevation, where you're going to feel at elevation, how to tell if you're getting hemp or not. So those are different things that I over the years just would study like no other. And I still study to the day because it's a sport that's always, you're learning, every mountain's different. And when I'm on an expedition with someone that's better than me at it, I'm always opening to learning what they know. So I would say in a short term, the way that I actually got into it or learned it was doing it and then learning from those when I went on expeditions. And I'd be like, hey, I want to learn from you. Get a guide, talk to your guide. Like, again, if you really want to get into mountaineering, I would say find a mountain that has snow on it, alpine, and get a guy that can really teach you the fundamental basics that you're going to need to know. And that will, if you're really into it, really study from your, the past, Sir Hilary's, the Sophia, the Danes, like those people that have actually climbed, and study how they got into it. And it all comes down to, in my opinion, just consistency and passion. And that's what I used.
Your description there of the triangle and just working on three things and focusing on that, and it goes back to that incremental improvement. It really makes me think that your grandparents and their military background had a huge impact on who you are today, because that is military discipline right there.
Yeah, for sure. My grandfather, who I love, my grandparents, I still make my bed every day, and then I have everything. Yeah, but they definitely did. I think it's helped. It's definitely, because what my grandparents taught me was something that was super key, is that it's not anyone's responsibility to teach you things that you really want to know and passionate about. You're going to have to try things for the first time yourself, and you're going to fail a lot. I have failed a lot, and that is great. When I fail at something, I write it down in my notebook. I study it on myself and go like, how'd you fail here? And I try it again, and I try it again, and I break it down to that fundamental level. And that's something my grandparents really, really instilled in me, is you're gonna face challenges. And I think being an African American, the odds are already against you. And so if you're looking for a handout, you're not going to get that. You need to take your hands and build what you want to build. And that's what they told me. And that's what I did.
Nice. Now, I think I read, I'm not sure if it was Gear Junkie or if it was the Outside magazine article, but I read about you've had 50 summits.
Yeah. So we had 50. So, and actually there's more.
50, 50, not 15, 50
Yeah.
summits. Yeah.
Oh, that, because I was counting the other day, and everyone was like, how many is this now? Like, when I was down in Aconcagua, we climbed. And if you do the Aconcagua expedition with AMG, they're amazing, by the way. I love you guys down there. Hope you're all safe. Amazing team. We climbed another mountain to obviously acclimate for Aconcagua. And everyone goes, Andrew, what number is this? And I go, I was like 54. And I was just like, and that was a while ago. So now I think well, probably in 59, 60 at this point. So it's been an amazing time doing it. And the way I did it, I used to do about 5 to 6 mountains a year. So globally, and then domestically, and I would just travel to those places and climb. So the Trinity climb in Southeast Asia, from Mount Kinabalu to Mount J to Mount Fuji. Indonesia, Mount Agang, you have Lombok, you have so many different mountains there. And then you have the Andes down there, and then you have Bolivia, the highest mountain in Central America, which is in Guatemala. Mount Pico, which is in the Azores. So it just goes on. And but yeah, my mom said this other day, she goes, you should keep a running list. And I go, you're right. And she's like, can't you tell by your passport? Because I'm always getting a new passport. And obviously before the pandemic. And it's always been something I'm just grateful for. And it's, again, that first mountain I climbed back in Detroit was the springboard. And I honestly and to be honest with you, Doc, there's been mountains where, you'd be surprised. The smallest mountain was the hardest one. The Mount Pico in the Azores is one I couldn't summit, because the person I was with, it was my girlfriend at the time. Her and I are climbing, and the conditions it's again, it's in that trade wind area of the North Atlantic, and it's right, again, it's a beautiful, the Azores are beautiful, but I looked at her and she looked at me and she goes, I'm too afraid to climb. And I looked down at her and I said, okay, it's okay. And she was like, you climbed over 30 mountains in a row, always summiting. And that was like the first one I couldn't do. And that's back to my point where it's like, what's the lesson life is trying to teach me right here? Not everything is about conquering, it's about connecting. And someone that I said that, like that moment in life made me really believe that and stick to that, because I wasn't going to sacrifice someone I truly care about to just summit. And she's like, go on without me. And I was like, we're doing this together. We've climbed mountains in Indonesia together. And so, but yeah, over 50. Sorry, we got a lot.
Is there an Andrew King website?
There is the Between Worlds Project website.
Okay, well, I think there should be a little offshoot on the Between Worlds website. It should be Andrew King's summits, and you have a list, a chronological list of your summits, starting with that first summit in Detroit.
I think that would be great. Here's the thing. I didn't even know there was a thing called peakbagging.com. I didn't even know what that was until recently. And like people were like, are you peak bagging? I was like, what is that? I just go to the top and meditate.
You are a peak bagger, my friend.
I didn't know what that was. I was like, what is peak bagging?
All right, Kate, can you distill down to your top three peaks so far?
I would say top three for me would be Kilimanjaro, 100%. And I'll tell you why. Kilimanjaro, climbing that, I'll tell you the story, Doc, of the Kilimanjaro climbing. So the Kilimanjaro one is a big one for me because I'm with that trip was hard. So I came in, let me take a step back. Kilimanjaro was the end of me doing 4 different mountains around the world in 12 weeks. So I made a goal for myself to do 4 mountains within 12 weeks around the world in different places, from Morocco to Hawaii, Mount Whitney, and to Kilimanjaro, all the prep for Kilimanjaro, because Kilimanjaro was at the end in December. And so I am trying to fly into, Wuxi, where Kilimanjaro, the airport is, and I get stopped in Dubai, and my flight is changed completely. I had it down, logistically down to down to everything. I was like, at least I have 2 days, get there and acclimate, I'll be fine. No, I actually got, we hit an error or issue in Dubai, and I had to get a new flight and everything. I flew in to start my Kilimanjaro trek the day of, not the day of, the 3 hours before. So I landed, no acclimatizing, dropped my stuff off that I'm not climbing with at the hotel. And then they just drove me right to the gate and everyone was just ready to rock and roll. So we get ready to rock and roll and we just start going. I'm just going to do it. I just start going. I'm like, here you go. Again, that's where your mental aspect is very key. And I just start walking up and I'm going with everyone. Along the way, members of our team get sick and members of our team get altitude sickness. Oddly enough, I didn't. And so we get to, I think, the last gate before this summit, and everyone in the team, besides myself and one other guy, gets altitude sickness. And so I look at them and I go, I'm going to run for it. And they go, what? And I go no, I'm going to really run for this summit, because if I stand up here any longer, I'm going to have to vomit and we know how this goes. So the guy is with me and I just start booking it through the ice and everything. I'm just going. He's like, slow down. I'm like, nope, gotta make it. So I just start going towards the top. I get to the top, take the photo, and then meditate. I meditate, see Kenya. I can see everything out there and it's beautiful. Come up and we start going back and I go it's coming. And I just, everything comes up and I'm like, there we go. That's what I knew was going to happen.
Hang on a second, Andrew. You just kind of glossed over that. I've been on top of Whitney, and that's at 14,500 feet, right? And the last half mile getting to the top of Whitney was like walk 100 feet and stop for 5 minutes, right? Catch your breath. Yeah. So you're at more than 18,000 feet on Kilimanjaro, and you're sprinting up to the top.
It's basically like a light jog at this point. You can see everyone.
You know what, light jog in that at that altitude, that's a sprint. And I have to imagine the reaction of the I don't know, the regulars, the people who live there, the guides. I mean, how did they respond to you running to the top of Kilimanjaro?
It was interesting because this is what happened. So it wasn't just them; it's also the other teams that are just looking at me oddly. They're just like, "This guy's sprinting past." They're like, "This guy is just sprinting." I was like, "No packs, just go. We're going." So, so when I come off the mountain back to base, this is why this mountain means a lot to me. All of the guides from each different tour company start clapping and dancing and like celebrating. And I'm like, why are you guys doing this for other people? Like, what's going on? And my guide comes up to me and he says, you did something that most of us never see. You did something that really showed the power of what we've always said. Like, you're someone that's Black, but you have so much, happiness and love in you and determination that it was just beautiful to witness. And everyone was just dancing around. I was like, what is going on? And that to me it will always be in my heart and to this day, because I didn't plan on doing that. I just didn't want to, gas out or tap out right there, knowing I could do that. But it showed to them that the heart and dedication. And someone's like, you're lying. They're like, you're lying. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Mufasa, great. But it was what the locals really loved about it. So that will always be a place in my heart. And I look forward to the day that I can go back. And I was actually thinking about this. I would love to go back and be a Sherpa with them and like carry things up and just be with them in that community and train with them. So hopefully one day that comes into fruition, but amazing experience. So that's my number one.
What a story.
Number two, thank you. Like number two would be Mount Jade in Taiwan, because it changed my life drastically. That's how the Between Worlds project came into what it is now, which we'll talk a little bit more about. That climb, on the way to climb, the Trinity summits, if you look it up, it's like Mount Fuji, Mount Jade, Mount, Kinabalu in Malaysia. That climb for me showed me what privilege looks like being an American and everyone else is outside of that developed ecosystem. I went to a little shop there to get hot chocolate in a little coal mining town on my way up, and traveling by myself, and had a conversation with a woman that really sparked me to think heavily about where I am in this world, the glass ceiling we're all fighting to get through. And Mountain Jade wasn't a big mountain. It's just the mental aspect that it widened up my perspective of what climbing is to me. It's not about conquering, it's about connecting. And that was where, again, it solidified, if you're going to do something, do it with heart and passion and give back to other people. And then number three would be, that's a tough, man, these are tough ones. Number three would be Aconcagua. And I say Aconcagua because Aconcagua really beat the crap out of me. For all you listening on this pod, please do not change your diet to be anything else like 2 weeks or 3 weeks before a climb. Don't do it to yourself. Don't do it. I went vegan for 3 weeks out for that climb. Do not do that to yourself. 20,000 feet will not treat you great. But
no drastic changes before major endurance events in your life.
Don't do that. I was like, let me try this out. Yeah, I'll do this challenge. Don't do that to yourself. Definitely noob right there. So that climb for me was the longest. That was probably, that was the first longest one. That was like over a month of climbing or trekking, I would say. And I met people on that trip where, that's a trip where I dealt with racism on that trip. I dealt with heavy racism within our team, an expedition team, because when you sign up for climbs, you don't really get to see or pick who's in your team. But I did deal with some racism, and it wasn't really, it was uncomfortable, but I was mature enough at that point to handle it. It wasn't just uncomfortable for me, it was uncomfortable for other people in my expedition team to deal with it and hear it, because they became uncomfortable. And those individuals, though I tried to educate them on what it's not appropriate to say those things, they really tried to say it and thought it was cool, but it wasn't. I think now, I can't speak from where they think now based off how things are now in the world escalated, but that was a really interesting one. I met a friend there. They were from the UK, and I made a promise to her that I'll get her son to the top because she had to turn back because she couldn't do the climb anymore. And that again is what I mean by connecting with everyone. Like she just couldn't do it. She got to the point where she's like, I can't climb anymore. I'm tired. It's been like 15, 16 days, and we got another 4 or 5 days to go. So her son was on the trip with her, and he's a great kid, great, amazing person. Hey, Morgan, if you're out there listening to this, you're amazing. You know that already though. And I told her before she left high camp, I said, I'm going to make sure your son gets to the top. And he did. And Aconcagua, for me, like I was actually the last person to get up on that trip because I was pretty spent, like malnutritioned and such. And I sat up there and meditated with one of the best guys, Sebastian. So that trip was basically everything that I learned over a course of 10 years of what to be and what climbing and mountaineering meant to me was connect with people, be more than just here, give more than you take, and remember this mountain will beat the crap out of you and Mother Nature will hold no fury back. So come prepared. And honestly, Doc, like for those 10 years, I honestly was climbing in gear that was pretty bad. So those are my three. They're all taught me beautiful things about what I distill in myself now in climbing. So.
And did you say where Aconcagua was located?
That is in Argentina. That is
Argentina. Okay. All right.
That is in Argentina. So that's one of the 7 summits. So it's down Argentina, which is one of the most beautiful places. Like I remember leaving the park on the last day because you have to hike in and out. There is no other way to get there besides a helicopter to base camp, besides a helicopter, or you hike in or out. And that's a pretty long hike to get there. So I remember just posting it on Instagram and everyone watching the stories daily of me just walking through deserts, and you're seeing a glacier. We see like an avalanche like up above, like where we're staying. But yeah, it was amazing. So.
All right. Speaking of these 7 summits, we're going to get to your upcoming goal to conquer the 7 highest summits on each continent, as well as the 7 volcanic summits. And we're also going to talk about the Between Worlds project. But before we get to that, though, we're going to take a quick break. So stay tuned for that. We'll be right back.
Hey, this is Mac from Halfway Anywhere, and you're listening to the John freaking Muir Pod.
And welcome back. Andrew, let's spend a little time talking about what you were recognized for in Outside Magazine, and that is this challenge that you're undertaking to climb these 14 different summits. And as I was thinking about that in preparing for this pod, I thought to myself, hey, one of these summits is Everest. Andrew is going to be climbing Mount Everest.
Yeah.
And that's mind-blowing. Just because of the scale of Mount Everest. I mean, that is a huge, huge undertaking.
Yeah. And so I'll say this, it dawned on me that, let's talk about back to what we started this podcast with is what I got recognized for in that speech and saying, I want to be something beyond social media, have something that's tangible and actionable. And so for me, I know that what is something that I am capable of, presenting to the world that others can see, take, and elevate beyond that action. And it was climbing and being in the outdoors. And so looking at what I'm able to do is take being an African-American mountaineer that's self-taught and go after the 7 highest mountains on each continent and the 7 highest volcanoes as well. And so that to me was something that I put on myself to say, this is my promise to not only the African-American or people of color community or those that are marginalized community, it's my promise to make sure that I'm gone beyond what we just saw over the summer, to make sure that there's something that this is actionable. And I think that's where a lot of the times when we have these big shifts within society, especially on social media, and everyone gets involved, is it's gone the next quarter. And I didn't want that to happen. It's like, this is going to be a journey. This is going to be a long journey. I have sponsors now that are great, that have given me gear, but financially, I've been paying it myself, working 2 jobs, did Postmates on top of doing my corporate job as well. And people go like, why would you do that? Like, you have a great job. I'm like, I'm financial literate. I have 2 degrees. I work for a really great company. But at the same time, this is not a cheap sport at all. This is not something you just can, not have the gear and the money for. It's very expensive. And if it's not paid up, you will definitely feel those consequences. So climbing these mountains, I've done Kilimanjaro, I've done Aconcagua, I just did Pico de Azua. I always butcher that name. I'm so sorry if anyone here is from Mexico. I'm really sorry. But that's the highest mountain in North America, and then highest volcano in North America. And then the highest volcano in Africa is Kilimanjaro, and the highest mountain. But this challenge isn't just about Andrew King climbing and conquering. It's about connecting and talking about each region has issues of sexism, racism, climate change, economical barriers. And just to tell you about the economical barriers, though I did this for years, I climbed Aconcagua in Amazon parka and some Walmart pants and some boots. I had to rent other boots. And that's always, and up until July, where Black Diamond and Hoka and Sea to Summit got involved, I had to start a GoFundMe page. And then when I really got gear, I was sitting there being like, I don't have to do Postmates anymore for gear. I was like, that was the first time. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I now know what a real parka feels like. I now know what it feels like to have really good mountaineering boots that are really good. Like, I was doubling up my socks for Aconcagua. And I think now I don't have to do that. And just give people a sense of what that feels like. When I went to Mexico to climb on that volcano, it was a breeze because training is something I'll do naturally. The discipline of it will be natural. Working on like my rope management, my crampon management, my, crevasse, rescue like manager, like those are things I'm doing naturally. And not having the gear, that's something I didn't have to focus on anymore. So, this challenge is showing all of that, what it is like for someone that is traditionally not represented in this sport, the hurdles they have to overcome and how they do it. So I look forward to getting up Everest and just being at the base camp. I've been studying that mountain for a very long time. I watched every YouTube video that's on it. I've probably seen it, even the Amazon episodes. I've studied it. I can tell you what it's like flying into Kathmandu, looking at it. And I look forward to just giving it a shot, not just to be a part of the record books, but to be beyond that and to give more people concepts like no African American has ever done all 14. And that to me is interesting enough. And I'm like, well, 5,000 people or more have climbed Everest, but there's only been like maybe 2 or maybe 10 that are African American. Or even like for someone of color that are not like, don't include, if you're not including like the locals that are from, Nepal. So that's mind blowing. And then when you think of like the 7 summits, the list is even smaller. And I'm just like, why is that? And so I want to challenge that on the climb. And so it's not about me getting to the top. It's more about us continuing the conversation. So.
Yeah. Speaking of that, is there any record of how many people have actually done these 14 summits?
I think there might be. I looked it up. I tried to look it up, but it's not a lot. I think it's like 500 or so. No, it's probably less. I don't know. I looked it up, and I don't think it's that many people. But yeah,
that's a pretty select group.
It is. It's because you're looking at, because each of those volcanoes are pretty rigorous, and there's 2 types of, it's just like everyone, since there's 2, like the 7 summits, there's mountaineering 7 summits, and then there's the other list for 7 summits. And what I mean by the other is you can do the highest mountain in Australia, which will count as being the highest mountain in the Asia Pacific region. But there is actually Puncak, which is in Indonesia, or Papua New Guinea, which is considered the mountaineering 7 summits. And that's what I'm going after, is that, like, I'll do the one in Australia. Love you, Australia. Great waves. Love everything there. Love you guys. See you in the Olympics. But it's more of the doing the mountaineering side, like pushing that limit. And so that is what I'll be looking to. But yeah, I don't, if you look it up, I think it's probably a really small selective list because you have to have a lot of funding to pull that off.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And so, I mean, you talk about this not being a short-term goal. This is going to take a while because it's not just, okay, it's not just climbing 14, right? There's a lot that goes into this. You climbed 3 out of 14 so far, but in preparation for these peaks, for these expeditions, it's not a day hike. These are expeditions. And so in training for these, I mean, what does that entail?
Oh, that's a good question. And for me, I'll go through my training regime. Like today was a 3-peat day for me, or a push day, I call it. It's where I wake up early and I go and do a no less than 1,000 feet elevation sprint up mountain. And then I hit the water doing breath work, and then I hit the gym as well. So that's a 3-day workout. Then I do a big push day, which is going up Mount Baldy, doing that early in the morning, 4 or 5 in the morning, starting, going through, scaling up Mount Baldy, getting back before my meetings at 9 o'clock. So training is not just you wake up, you roll out of bed, you're going to go climb. I've seen people do that on some of these documentaries. You all have a lot of heart. Love it. But for training, you have to have training mountains. Again, Mount Whitney is my training gear checking mountain when it comes to the winter season. And Mount Baldy is my close to home gear checking mountain for just making sure endurance. So every mountain that is on that list of the 14, there's going to be a list of other ones that I'll be doing as well to make sure that I'm physically fit and ready to handle them. I'll just say this, I'll jump into that. The Snow Leopard Challenge is what I'll be using to get ready for Everest. If you're a mountaineer listening to this, you probably know what the Snow Leopard Challenge is. It's the highest mountains in the former USSR. And it's a challenge that takes you through they're all 7,000 meter mountains. And they're in some Kazakhstan, some really deep remote parts of the former USSR. And so those mountains to me are the ones I would preferably train on if I ever do get funding for these climbs to prepare me for Everest. Because though Everest looks like a walk in the park to some people, you're just going up, there are things that you don't see that are behind the scenes. Like there's crevasses, there's avalanches. Oh my gosh, there's so many different aspects of that mountain that you need to train for. Denali is actually, hopefully I'll do it this year if I get funding, is the hardest of the 7 on top of then Benson because it's isolated. You come in with your gear, you're pulling on a sled and you're setting up your base camp. Everest has a base camp for you, Wi-Fi and everything ready to go for you. Denali, you're dropped off on a plane. They say, we'll see you in 3 weeks. If anything else, give us a call. That to me, and it's very intense. So I'm training on other mountains, gearing myself up for that. I don't want it to be a straight up the mountain. I want to connect with people within those regions, feel and understand what these mountains mean to them, take their stories with me up the mountain and do it justice. So, yeah.
Nice. So which mountain is next on the list, of the 14? Is it Denali?
Yeah, it's Denali. We're trying to get funding now, and it's tough. And I was sitting there like, you may see me up being a Postmates guy if I don't get any funding. Just letting you know, because it's a lot, and Denali's the next one. The reason why Denali's the next one, to be very candid, is if COVID didn't happen or the pandemic didn't happen, I would have gone and done Elbrus, Matterhorn, Edgar, and and those would have been it. And definitely train there in Europe. But unfortunately, because of the pandemic, it makes more sense to stay closer to home and try those and get ready for Denali. And so I wanted to do Rainier, Grand Teton, and Hood to get ready for Denali. But if we're not allowed to, if we don't find funding, then I'm just going to give Denali a go. And it'll just be, here we go, all in. Let's put all the cards in and see if we get it. And so, yeah. So.
Hey, can I get a commitment out of you to come back on the pod after you've done Denali? I'd love to talk to you about it.
Doc, you can get me to come back on after every one of these mountains, my friend.
Fantastic.
100%. Like, that is on record. It's on record. It's unrecorded. It's so, anytime I'm done with these, I would love to talk to people about my experience and give beta to what it's like and help anyone. I hope it really, if you're any, like, your gender, race, I hope you find what, I'm finding, or even more on these climbs. So I'm happy to do that no matter what. So count me in.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you. So we wish you the best of luck on your endeavors, the 14 peaks. Let's talk a little bit now about the Between Worlds project. Tell us what that's all about.
Yeah, so that goes back to when you asked me the question about the climbs. The Between Worlds project is a project that I decided to create 5 years ago, a little bit over that. It's basically, if you think about it, you, myself, Doc, everyone that you come in contact with, we're all lottery tickets. No one has ever asked where they want to be born, what they want to look like, what gender you want, what race you want. You're just basically a lottery ticket, and you're presented out to the world, and that's what you have to deal with. And so we're all between this world where we stand and then a glass ceiling that's above us where we want to be. And so we're navigating between those worlds. As for me, being an African American, I'm navigating what it means to be in a country that really doesn't understand yet what it looks like for me to have rights that are equal, and where it doesn't have to be a struggle or a very big conversation or escalation of violence sometimes. And so that came about from that conversation I had in Taiwan, where you have this young Andrew King that's like, I'm going around, I'm climbing these mountains, having some fun, and I sit back and I'm like, yeah, Taiwan, great place, love the street food. And I get to this little town on my way to, the base of Mount Jade, and I'm like, hey, can I get some hot chocolate? And I talk to this woman in her, little coffee shop. And she's like, where are you from? And I was like, oh, I'm from America. She goes, oh, I love America. I was like, you should come sometime. Like, definitely. And as soon as that leaves my mouth, I didn't mean to sound ignorant about it. It would cost her everything to do that, just to get a ticket, and let alone have the experience that I have daily to experience America to some degree. And I noticed, I was like, she's between that world too, of where she is and where she wants to be. And so now every place I go, I work with a nonprofit within that place, within that country or community. If it's surfing expedition, if it's climbing, if it's diving, no matter what, give more than you take from away. And it has 4 core values: is always give back to those that have less or like lacking resources. Always give those that have their voice silenced a place to speak. Like I said, make sure you're taking less than what you can give, and always just being a good person in that space. And I decided to, every time I go now, is to film nonprofits on their issues that they're dealing with. So in Kilimanjaro, I was lucky enough to go down the street from where the gates are, where you start in Mushi, and there is an orphanage for street children. And those street children are not that far from one of the most commercialized mountains in the world, where you can, $3,000 to them is like, they just won the lottery. And if you have that much money, $200 to $100 goes a long way for them. And I would just sit there and learned about how some of their students were HIV positive, to some of them were addicted on glue, some of them were like dealt with alcoholism already. And I'm sitting there going like, this is, as a child, you shouldn't have to deal with those things, let alone when you're right down the street. And so there's more that needs to be done. I'm like sitting there, why do not people know more about this? And it's like, it takes me back to the woman that I had hot chocolate with. Is like, we're all between these worlds. We're trying to navigate the best way, but let's help each other break through that glass ceiling together. And the same thing in Morocco, when I climb Mount Tabaku up in Morocco, is I went over there and volunteered at a women's refuge, and I was a gardener for the day. I just like, hey, can I come? I'm on my way to climb this mountain in Northern Africa. Can I please just come and learn about what it means to have, limited rights within your community? And back in America, we're dealing with the Me Too movement right now. So can we really get a sense of like, what's that like for you being in a Muslim culture where you're not able to do certain things that we are over here? And I got a sense of what that like, and it was beautiful to not only be a gardener for a day to learn how to garden properly, but also to learn what it's like to be in a community where they didn't judge each other on the have and have nots. They took in women that were disowned by their significant others or had had certain disabilities, and they made them feel loved. They didn't really judge them on what they didn't have. It was a place of happiness. And the Between Worlds Project stands on those grounds where any place you go to, you give back. If you're climbing, you're connecting before you conquer. And that's the Between Worlds Project. So been doing it by myself for years, just my iPhone, a drone, and a GoPro, and just sitting down like, Doc, you're doing here. It's like, let's have a talk. Let's talk about where you started and where you got to. And those stories are what I carry with me now up each mountain. And that's why climbing those 14 mountains it's not about just climbing. It's about taking those stories and standing on top of a mountain and saying, this is the people that all helped me get here. Give back to them as well. So
that's beautiful. That's awesome. Where can our listeners learn more about the Between Worlds Project?
So I finally got a website up. It took me a while to get that, but I have a website. It's betweenworlds.com. So you can check out those 3 stories I just talked about, as well as the one down in Ecuador when we did Cotopaxi and climbing that mountain or volcano as well, and learning about how a beautiful, loving community, Mocopekino, is trying to save their rainforest, which that rainforest provides fresh water to their neighboring sisters and brothers and their other countries. So deforestation and the corruption within their current communities hinders them from doing that. So again, just you can go there and check it out. We will be doing, hopefully I'll get some help. Maybe I'll get some help with someone. If you want to intern, let me know. So if you can go check it out there and read the stories, and hopefully in 2021, there'll be some really cool stories coming up, heading to the Dominican Republic and to Colombia. So
very good. Very good. Andrew, you know where we are right now?
No, it's 8:00.
We are at that time of the episode where I turn to you and say, Andrew, what is your pro tip insight of the week? What little tidbit, what piece of advice could you share with our listeners to make their next adventure that much more epic?
Oh, yeah. My pro tip of the week would be to meditate and understand your intentions before you take off into that adventure. Make a list of, I want to say the 3 things again, but 3 things that you really want to achieve from your experience in that next adventure. Not conquer, achieve internally. If it's pick up 3 things of waste, give back to this person, high five this person. But I don't know if you can high five, but you gotta stay 6 feet for a while. But really just set your expectations of what you want that journey to fulfill or achieve for you. That is my pro tip, because when you do that, you go into that adventure not only with, it sounds kind of like contradicting, but you go into with an understanding of what you look to get out of it. And when you come back, you'll be a different person after you achieve those 3 things. So.
Very nice. Thank you. So there you have it. That's it. Season 2, episode 2 is in the books. I hope our listeners enjoyed our time with Andrew, and I want to thank him for joining us this week. Andrew, how can our listeners keep up with you on social media, and where can they find updates on your latest adventures?
Please add me or, talk to me on Instagram, Andrew Alexander King. And I'm going to be getting back into Twitter at Andrew Alexander King as well. I'll probably just be tweeting a lot of poems that I write in nature on Twitter.
There's poems too, huh?
I write poems daily.
Oh, I need to have some of those.
Yeah, I'll write some poems. So for sure you'll see that on my Twitter. But for anything else that's related to the expeditions or the surfing, please, if you have any questions, I love hearing from people that want to learn more or ask more. So Andrew Alexander King on Instagram and Twitter, Andrew Alexander King, and Between Worlds Project to learn more.
Great. Remember to check out the pod on social media as well. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. And if you have comments or clips you want to share, you can send it to me at johnfreakinmuir@gmail.com. Andrew, I'm also looking to give our listeners your recommendation for a book, a movie, a documentary, a website, or a YouTube channel that will keep them connected to outdoor adventures. This is our adventure media recommendation.
Oh yeah, I have a good one. It's mountains. One second. It's mountains, and it's definitely. Oh yeah, mountains. Mountains beyond mountains. Mountains beyond mountains.
Mountains Beyond Mountains. That's a book?
Yes, it is a book, and it's a beautiful book about a doctor that went to Haiti. And again, if you read the book, it's one of the beautiful quote in that book. That's the name of the book. It says, "Every mountain has a mountain beyond it." And when he said that, it wasn't a actual mountain; it was one internally. So when we have a mountain internally, we're overcoming, which was mine was in Detroit. There's another one we all have to overcome as well. So it's a good book.
Great. Thank you for that. That's a wrap from the John Freakin' Muir studio. Andrew, before we sign off here, you want to give any shout outs to any friends or family who might be listening?
Yeah, I would like to thank, my mom, my grandmother. I love you all, my brother and sister, everyone at Hoka, Sea to Summit, and the BD for believing in me, and all my friends that have been with me. And for my friends from Kilimanjaro to Argentina, Tanzania to Argentina to Malaysia, and around the world, I wouldn't be here without you. So I'm not going to let you down. I love you all. And every time I step on a mountain, I'm thinking of you. So thank you.
All right. Thank you for tuning in. Always remember, the trail is the trail. It doesn't care if you want to go downhill. It doesn't care if it's almost dark and you're looking for a campsite. It doesn't even care if you're about to lose your lunch as you're sprinting to the top of Kilimanjaro. The trail is the trail. Embrace the suck.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Doc.